Welcome back then folks to build number 2 and special projects pack number 22, and this one is pretty much the holy grail of Vipers. It's the Viper GT2 Championship Edition. Sometimes misnamed the GTS-R road car. It is not a GTS-R road car because it's not a homologation car. This was not built because they had to, it was built because they wanted to. They built it after they had victory, which is actually kind of a cool idea. It means that they just made it because, hey, the Viper turned out so good for racing that let's make it a road-inspired version. And for those who are less familiar with the car, because let's be honest, it's not like it appears in that many games, this has the exact same engine tune at the time as the first generation Viper ACR did, which of course we've already done a build for as well. That's the one that appears in Forza, the 1999 shape, which looks very, very understated. So on that point of the ACR, what I actually set out to do was essentially take what I did with that ACR build and evolve it into this. So although you probably won't do this anyway, but in theory, you could take your ACR and kind of turn it into this. I suspect most of you, like me, will just have two different versions, but if you wanted to, you in theory could. As far as the spec, I've taken a little bit of a liberty with the weight, because the weight, as far as what's quoted online, does vary quite a bit. So I've opted to make it, I want to say it was like 30 or so kilos, I think, lighter than the ACR, which is probably not that realistic. It's probably not quite that much, but 1520 still feels to me quite believable. 466 horses is exactly the same as what we've done with that ACR. And as far as the point difference, it's not actually that crazy. I tell you what, considering the point difference, the lap time difference is drastic between the two cars, 4 seconds quicker than the first gen ACR from a build which is 594 points compared to 568. So barely over a 20-point difference, and that is a big difference in terms of lap time, especially when you're running the same horsepower and not much of a difference in weight either. So it really does show the difference that tyres, aero, and tightening up the suspension, etc. makes. So as far as the actual build, there are one or two things which you don't need to fit, because I was basically following my own build of the ACR and then I evolved it with extra parts, but you'll see what I mean in a second. So you want your sports air filter, the stage 1 weight, of course that would be way too light, but we will use ballast to bring it back up again. We've got the sports hards anyway. This is a significant way in which I've improved it over the ACR. I left the hards on there. For this one I've gone for mediums instead. Why medium? Well, because it's an improvement in grip, which seems appropriate to the car, but also I didn't want it to go over 600 points, which of course with the softs it is well over 600. So if you want to put it on them, absolutely, but I figured that quite a few of you, and this is the beauty of a lot of special projects, with the new Power Pack DLC coming out with loads more career mode events, you never know what you might be able to use. So 600 point events might be quite useful for a lot of the builds that I've done, or 400, 700, 500, whatever the case may be. So you could put those on if you want to. As far as the club sports section, we've got the sports brakes. The power restrictor isn't necessary for this one. We do have the ballast, like I said. As far as the semi-racing stuff, we've got the racing crank. Of course, that is overkill compared to real life, but we've got to get the horsepower level one way or another. As far as the diff, that is, of course, the limited slip. The semi-racing clutch and flywheel, again, you could say that's a bit of overkill. I've gone for it because I imagine like maybe what an owner might have done to the car. You'll see in a second with the brake pads, I've done a similar thing. Kind of imagining somebody almost like fitting slightly better components versus the factory. So, you know, you'll have to decide on the realism front whether or not you want to have that kind of mentality or not. As far as the suspension, this is what I'm talking about, wherein you don't actually need this. I've gone for the full racing suspension for this build, so it's got that extra level of malleability and more in-depth tuning, versus we had the height adjustable on the ACR. So again, that's one of the major differences between the two. As far as the racing stuff, we've got the racing pads. Like I said, you could definitely consider that overkill. I'll leave it up to you. You could go for the sports pads and I wouldn't hold it against you. Like I said, we've got the sports suspension as well. As far as the extreme stuff, we've got nothing there, and likewise for the ultimate. So, like I said, you can literally take the ACR, swap out the visuals, add a couple of extra parts, and it literally is like just a couple of extra parts, and you're basically done. Now, for me, I like having both in the garage, but if you're on a budget, maybe, or you don't like having doubles of cars, whatever the case may be, then I guess you could build one off as the other. Now, as far as the suspension, we've got 95mm front and rear, which looks crazy high, but of course for this car it actually isn't. 5 on the anti-roll, 35 on the dampers for the compression, 45 on the expansion, 2.45 for the frequency on the springs, 0.8 camber, which if I recall, I believe is the same as what I had on the ACR, because the ACR of course was already a great car through corners anyway. Neutral toe on the front, point toe in, 0.0 in, 0.20 in even for the toe on the rear. As far as the diff, nothing too crazy if I recall in comparison to standard, so 720 and 10, but of course with the fully customised diff, it does give you the option of changing that on the fly if you want to. As far as all of this stuff, well, for the ballast, of course, 124 kilos, if you do want to match what I've done with the 1520. I've put it 15% toward the front, which gives us quite a nice 49.51. Again, you could argue realism on that, but hey, let's have a little bit of fun here and there. And as far as the downforce, I've actually opted to lower it on the back, because even though it does have the wing, and of course the wing is giving you anyway more downforce even at 70, I didn't want to upset the apple cart by having none on the front and too much on the back. And as it turns out, I would say it's pretty much perfect, having the minimum amount on the rear to counter the front having none. So that's it for the build. Like I said, nothing too crazy really, and yet a 4-second difference in lap time, well, that is of course exactly what I'll show you now out on the track. Of course we had to take it to Laguna Seca, because that's basically my unofficial proving ground for Vipers. I've done so many. I did the Viper Time Attack, the ACR, in fact basically every generation of the ACR, now this one, the ACR-X, so there are so many Viper builds in special projects, and this one was probably the one glaring one which we hadn't done yet. I'd even done stuff like the McLaren Viper, like super deep cut stuff, and now we've got the Holy Grail. This, in my opinion, is kind of the car which laid the groundwork for what the ACR formula would become over time. The bigger wing, the more motorsport derived personality. In fact, I said as much recently in the members section for Project Gotham. This car though, to put it succinctly, is so much fun to drive. It is shockingly forgiving. It's one of those cars where you can kick the tail out if you want to, but it is totally in control if you don't want it to do that. And it's also one of those cars where me, as I've said before, being far from the fastest of drivers in the world, I can tell immediately that for many of you, you will definitely get quicker lap times than me out of a car like this. And you can feel that it has so much more to give, which again is a shocking difference if you compare it to what was already good, but not necessarily mind-blowing in the form of the ACR. It really does show the difference of downforce, better tyres, and tightening up the suspension. So if you do decide to use it, I hope you enjoy it. Definitely a very, very fun one for Viper fans. And of course, I'll see you with plenty more during the coming week. Check out the Corvette GT1 from earlier today, and of course 8 more builds still to come. But for now, thanks for watching.